now available in paperback and e-readers. Spellbound, a darker shade of black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. The mainstream media and some local New York and New Jersey politicians are trying to describe the massacre which took place in a Jersey City kosher supermarket as some sort of domestic terrorism related to anti-Semitism. And they're trying to connect this act of alleged domestic anti-Semitic terrorism to the Hebrew Israelite group. However, when I take a critical examination of this massacre in Jersey City, New Jersey, I don't know if I can say that affirmatively it is some sort of domestic terrorism or some sort of act of anti-Semitic domestic terrorism based on the alleged information to have been presented by both those politicians and those mainstream media sources. Because when I take a further critical examination of this massacre in Jersey City, New Jersey, I actually see another incident that fits right in line with the pattern and profile of America's ongoing man crisis. And I also see how the mainstream media is trying to demonize the Hebrew Israelite group and make them out to be a villain of a situation that I don't believe that the Hebrew Israelites have anything to be involved with, because the Hebrew Israelites' philosophy just does not fit right in line with any of the approaches that this individual has participated in. Now, when I take a critical examination of your David Anderson, the man who is alleged to have participated in the massacre at the Jersey City kosher supermarket, I see an individual whose behavior fits right in line with the pattern and profile I have talked about in numerous videos as related to these mass shooters and these beta males who are these men in crisis. And when I really look at this David Anderson, I see a textbook person who is just like what I talked about in the chapter of the man crisis detailing mass shootings. Now, your David Anderson has been a very deeply troubled individual ever since 2003, when he was discharged from the United States military. And since he left the United States military, this man has had a hard time setting and navigating a course for his life. This man, David Anderson, had been arrested multiple times for possession of illegal firearms, and he had been serving time in prison multiple times for possessing illegal firearms. And I believe it was all of those convictions for possessing illegal firearms that exacerbated his situation with finding stable employment and finding a way to take care of himself. And I believe this is one of the things that led to David Anderson's frustrations and anger, and that anger simmering and boiling within him because this man served his country and then found himself without being able to find any opportunities to move his life forward after his term of service in the military. And I believe that as he was frustrated, he had decided to find a scapegoat for his inability to build and start his life after the military. And that scapegoat was your Jews and the police department. And I believe that those were his individual beliefs. I believe that this was his individual opinion. And this was the main thing that really was driving your David Anderson's hatred of Jews and the police department, and the thing that motivated him to participate in that massacre at that kosher supermarket. I believe that he was acting alone, and this is the thing that people don't want to talk about, because the mainstream media and these local politicians, what they want to do is use your David Anderson's individual actions as a springboard to go after the Hebrew Israelite group. Now, according to some reports, this David Anderson wasn't even associated with the Hebrew Israelite group. He had just been researching the subject, but he had no affiliation with any Hebrew Israelite organization. But the mainstream media wants there to be a connection between your David Anderson and the Hebrew Israelites, because the mainstream media wants to demonize the Hebrew Israelite group because it does not like the messages that the Hebrew Israelite group promotes as related to black manhood and black masculinity. And what they want to do is use this incident with David Anderson as a way to go after that group and be able to shut that group down here in the United States of America. But when I look at David Anderson's actions, they clearly are those of a beta male who was a ticking time bomb for many years, a man who had been simmering and boiling in anger, a man who had been frustrated about the course of his life, a man who had been angry about the course of his life, and a man who eventually exploded in a rage, where he went from going and doing these online rants on social media to taking his actions to the street. Because when it comes down to these beta males, oftentimes they go from being frustrated about things in their personal life to going to places like social media to express their anger and frustration in long, hate-filled rants, to going out and participating in a spectrum of violent behaviors. And your David Anderson's behavior was growing more and more violent, because if you look at the way he had been treating his partner, Francine Graham, he had participated in a domestic violence incident before this, which shows me that his behavior was continuing to escalate as related to his violence. And this woman who was at his side, she was also a deeply troubled woman, because they said that she had extremely low self-esteem and she wanted a man. So she was willing to go along with this man because she wanted to have a man, and she was willing to go along with this man's insanity because she wanted to have a relationship with this man. So this was a codependent relationship between a beta male and a female with a low self-esteem. But the mainstream media, what they want you to do is believe that this incident was some sort of anti-Semitic attack by the Hebrew Israelite group. But that is not the case at all, based on the evidence presented, because when you take a critical examination of the Hebrew Israelite philosophy, the Hebrew Israelite philosophy follows the Bible. And as they are followers of the Most High Living God, most of those men who follow the Hebrew Israelite religion or belief system, they usually are nonviolent, they are usually pacifistic, and usually most Hebrew Israelites, they are focused on concepts like building a family, and they are focused on fathering children. And your David Anderson was not focused on any of these aspects that the Hebrew Israelites teach as related to their belief system. Because the Hebrew Israelite, in most cases, they want to have strong families, they want to build businesses, and they want to have a foundation that follows the standards of God's natural order. Most Hebrew Israelites, because they follow the Bible, they believe in, one, loving the Lord with all their heart, soul, and spirit, and two, loving their neighbors as themselves, and they believe in the Old Testament concept of thou shalt not murder. So you have a group that is pacifistic being associated with this massacre, And that's something that's diametrically opposed, again, to the belief of the Hebrew Israelite. So what is happening here is the mainstream media and these local politicians, what they're trying to do is demonize the Hebrew Israelites, because what they want to do is start a campaign to go after these men and women. And the reason why they want to go after these men and women is because these men and women preach a message of black empowerment, and they preach a message as related to black manhood, black masculinity, and black men being fathers. Moreover, the Hebrew Israelites preach a concept about building in a community. So these are things that mainstream media and white supremacy don't want being promoted in the black community, because these things run counter to what your white supremacy wants in the black community, which is a group of codependent individuals who are depending on white and non-black businesses and are producing families through illegitimate children who wind up dependent on government services. But your Hebrew Israelites are preaching a gospel where men are taught to be leaders, men are taught to be stewards, men are taught to be heads of household, men are taught to be fathers, and women are taught to submit to male authority. And these are concepts that white supremacy does not want promoted in the black community, and they don't want that gospel preached to black people. So what they want to do is demonize the Hebrew Israelites for their beliefs, and they want to make them a bad guy by associating them with anti-Semitism, and then use that association with anti-Semitism as a way to springboard waging a campaign against the Hebrew Israelites. That's what these mainstream media and local politicians want to use this incident as, a springboard to go after the Hebrew Israelite group. And this is something that just isn't right, because again, the facts of the case show that David Anderson was, one, acting alone, and two, was not applying any of the philosophies of the Hebrew Israelites to his life. Because again, a Hebrew Israelite is a man who is looking for a wife, and he is looking to have children with his wife, and he is looking to build with his wife. These are things that David Anderson was not doing. He was going out to destroy people's lives, and he was looking to attack people. And again, that just does not follow the philosophies of the Hebrew Israelite. But what follows the philosophies of white supremacy is trying to destroy groups of people out here who are black, who are trying to empower themselves, and black people who are trying to build in their own community. That's what white supremacy tries to do, and what they want to do is paint a narrative around this mass murder that took place at that kosher deli, making it associate with the Hebrew Israelites, when it is actually an isolated incident of yet another one of these beta males out here, a ticking time bomb, who exploded in a rage, and then decided, as he was exploding in a rage, to murder those Jewish people in that kosher supermarket and take their lives. And most people aren't looking at this man crisis as related to this beta male, a beta male who was a ticking time bomb, who had his fuse lit ever since he was discharged from the military. That's not the aspect that the mainstream media wants to focus on, because that can't get people watching the media that they're presenting. But when I look at this incident, I see what happens when you have a beta male who is a ticking time bomb. And these ticking time bombs, again, this, as I talked about in the man crisis, these men in the chapter Mass Shootings in the Man Crisis, these men simmer and boil in anger. They write their posts on social media. They write their rants and manifestos, excuse me, and then they plan out their attacks and implement their attacks. So that's what I see going on with this incident. And when you look at that incident, and if you probably look at this man's background, you will find that he came from a single mother household. And that is the main reason why this man participated in this anti-Semitic violence that they allege he has participated in. And this is the reason for his alleged anti-Semitic beliefs. But what they want to do, again, is make it look like he's associated with the Hebrew Israelites, when it's clear to me this man, from his actions, show he never had any connection with the Hebrew Israelites. And what they want to do is use this incident to go after a group that had nothing to do with this and make them out to be some sort of terrorists, when in actuality, when you read the Hebrew Israelite philosophy, which follows the Bible, these men and women usually are pacifistic and non-violent and are not about any of the things presented in mainstream media or what local politicians are saying about them. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, and my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to learn more about the dangerous behaviors of beta males, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback, Kindle, or other formats on places like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.